Good, man. All right, so let's get this. All right, so we got this started. Yeah, so James Cameron, man. So well, I guess we're back for another episode. Yada yada yada. Bullshit. Like thanks for coming. Like channels, whatever.
Like and subscribe.
No, just
Yeah.
whatever that BS we're supposed to say. I don't know. I'm just here to chat movies, and who cares?
Yeah.
All right, so this week I guess we have James Cameron is what we decided to talk about, and
Yeah.
probably like I would say one of the craziest directors of all time.
Yeah, he definitely has a reputation of being like a perfectionist and being very difficult, to put it charitably.
One of the biggest hotheads, I would say.
Yeah.
To be honest, of all the directors that I think about in terms of being great, he's one of the great ones. I don't think I would ever want to work with just because of how crazy he is.
Fair.
Yeah. But
actually, like when I was younger, like I feel like his movies specifically were very inspirational for me as a filmmaker.
Mhm.
So like for me, it's hard to say who my favorite director is, but I might have to say James Cameron.
That's fair. And honestly, I remember when I was a kid, I think I was around 8, maybe 7, when I watched Terminator for the first time. And I felt like I was getting away with something when I watched it because my mom let me watch it. I think I rented it too. I remember when I remember going to New York and like seeing posters for like Terminator 3 to that Rise of the Machines, even though I know that's not James Cameron, his franchise, but I felt like when I was watching Terminator 1 and 2, I felt like I was getting away with something. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be watching this, but like it was, but when you're a kid, like when you see a movie that you're not supposed to watch, you like it for that reason alone. But the fact that it was just as great as it is, especially like when you get older and you realize how great those movies were, you're just like, fuck, those are great. It wasn't just nostalgia. Definitely. It's not just nostalgic. You just like, you saw a master like who's really like doing top of the line work and really like getting the highest amount of production value out of its budget.
Oh, definitely. Because I think I had like a $7 million budget, which was more in like 84, but still, I mean, it was a pretty low budget considering it's like an action sci-fi. That was a pretty low budget. Yeah. And it actually is my favorite movie of the 80s. The first Terminator movie. Yeah, that's
fair. And like I don't think it's my favorite movie of the 80s. I think I've got to give that to Back to the Future just because of the amount of watches I've given that. But I feel like, but James Cameron just, well, what's amazing about Terminator is that it feels like, even though it's grown into this epic franchise, the first one feels very indie. Even like it's been like stated in the behind the scenes that it was very much like a guerrilla style film shoot. They were shooting without work permits some nights, like and there's some lore to the first Terminator, the ending scene where Sarah Connor is in Mexico and she drives off into the distance, like that gas station I think she was at. There was they got caught. Like there was some guy that came to the set and asked the directors like, "What are you doing? I think James Cameron had some kid on set or like some younger looking guy, and just had him post the director, just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're just making a student film, like so we're just doing something fun, just a project, just like please just let us do our thing." And so like I guess that cop just let them finish shooting, and I'm just wondering if that cop ever saw that movie thinking like, damn, that was the best student project ever made.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's funny.
I don't know, but it's one of those things to kind of add to like a bit of a lore, like a myth. Like I don't know if it's true, but I like to believe that's true, sort of deal.
Yeah. Well, I know, like there's that scene where Arnold has to he punches through a car window and like unlocks it or whatever. And I know I think I heard James Cameron's like, all right, we gotta get this real quick. All right, Arnold, just punch the window, because it was very run and gun, because low budget. Because that was James Cameron did Piranha 2: The Spawning a few years before that, and he kind of just stumbled into being the director. I think the original director quit, and he was already working on that movie. Actually, do you know about this short he did in the late 70s called Xenogenesis?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. I don't know really anything about it.
I've seen a little bit of it, and it's like the most indie DIY shit. Because he was I don't even know how old he was, but he was super young, and like it's like, considering that it was like no budget, it's like pretty amazing for like 78. And then I think that got him like, then he started working on doing effects and props for some movies in the early 80s. And that's kind of how he got his start.
Yeah, and what I appreciate about James Cameron, especially during that time, is that he really was becoming like the guy that was becoming a jack of all trades. Because if you've heard like in Avatar and like Titanic, like people have said that like if you couldn't do your job, you knew James Cameron could do it. Like because he was just so well versed in like in production design, set design, that like he could easily replace anyone. I think a little less so maybe like in CGI land, but like his ability to explain it is what probably is like made him iconic, because he has probably been, of like the 80s, I consider him like of the top 3 people to really be innovating in terms of like computer generated effects. Like him Robert
Zemeckis one of them?
Robert Zemeckis is the other one, and I'm throwing it in there, Steven Spielberg.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say George Lucas, but
I mean, I guess, but like I mean, like maybe I guess in terms of like Luke, I guess in terms of like Empire, but like is that CGI
if you think about
or
it,
like or Return of the Jedi?
The movie Willow.
No,
you know the movie Willow. So that was a Lucas. He didn't direct it. Ron Howard directed it, but it was a Lucasfilm production. Basically, George Lucas wanted to do a film version of The Hobbit, but he wasn't able to get the rights to it, so he just created his own similar kind of movie. And that, I think it came out in like 89 or something, 88. That had some early CGI in it as well, because I know like George Lucas is always kind of, you know, on the sort of cutting edge of a lot of you know, effects work, you know, throughout the last few decades. So
yeah, and especially for the prequel trilogy as well.
Oh yeah, definitely, for better or worse.
Yeah, exactly. But well, we might have to save Lucas for another talk. But
fair.
but yeah, definitely in terms of CGI, like Cameron, like just honestly, well, like he was the one that was like really like pushing it, and even in terms of like water simulations, like if you ever see, like I know we've discussed this, we haven't really seen The Abyss in full, or like we didn't really, or it's not fresh in our mind.
I've seen pieces of it,
yeah, because I'm the same way. But the one iconic scene in The Abyss that well, I mean, for the most part, the film was shot practically. It was shot completely underwater. But there was the one CGI scene where they had the water simulation kind of morph into the face. I think it was Ed Harris, I think it was, correct?
Oh, really?
But the thing is that that was like the first example, I think, of like computer generated water, or like a water simulation. And I think it was like one of the most expensive shots in cinema, like for CGI at that time. Like it was just like,
I think it was like 87. So yeah, 88, and like super early.
For the most part, I would just say by our standards, the water looks a little wonky, but like for the effect for that movie, it still holds up. Like it's still like you still buy into the authenticity of that shot.
Sure, yeah. I'm sure people back when they saw it, you know, in theaters back in the day were like amazed by that, you know. Yeah. And then also that's kind of like played in a Terminator 2 with the T-1000 with liquid metal, you know. That was kind of like a proto version of that.
That's exactly right. And honestly, I'm sure you've heard this, that The Abyss had a very troubled production, not only with like shooting it underwater, but like posts kept getting pushed. Like the delay, but I think that was a big reason, is that like, well, of course, Cameron being a perfectionist, it was the fact that like he was trying to really get these water simulations correct, or like getting like this liquid correct. And while it delayed a considerable amount of time in The Abyss, it actually was foundational for Terminator 2. These simulations that they're making, like for liquid, was like like just like it set the groundwork up for those.
So he's doing pre-production work on the post-production of The Abyss.
Exactly. That's cool. That's exactly what it was. Like, so his post work in The Abyss served as like the foundation for Terminator 2.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. But going back to the first Terminator movie, like, you know what's funny about James Cameron? Is that I'm not sure if you're aware about the first Terminator movie, is that it kind of rips off 2 episodes of the show, The Outer Limits.
I don't know this.
I believe it's 2 episodes of the show The Outer Limits, which was kind of like a Twilight Zone-esque show, um, and they were actually written by the same writer, Harlan Ellison. And then I believe he sued James Cameron or the movie or something. So now at the beginning of the credits, he gets an acknowledgement basically. Yeah. So so and that I think that plays into kind of I feel like James Cameron is not that original of a story of a writer, because Avatar is Pocahontas dances with wolves, Titanic with the doomed love story that actually was done even before that. Titanic story had already been done before.
Yeah.
And Terminator 2 in a lot of ways is just a retread of the first movie, even though it's amazing. But I feel like James Cameron is just an amazing storyteller, even if the stories aren't particularly original.
Yeah, I feel like that's fair, because most of it is in the execution. Like, that's what a great director is, because I mean, like, while yes, you want to be creative, it's all in the execution. And honestly, I never heard that. I never heard that. I never heard about that acknowledgement in Terminator, because I always thought the inception of the idea of Terminator was from James Cameron's dreams. For what I heard about this lore, he had like pneumonia or a flu for like 2 weeks, and he was just dreaming of like this apocalyptic world, and like he was getting woken up by machines sort of deal.
Yeah.
So he basically drew from that dream to end up penning the script.
Yeah, the scene where the Terminator is rising from the fire, that was actually like directly from his dream. That was the inspiration. So yeah, obviously the idea did come from that, but when the movie got written, he maybe inadvertently, I'm not saying he like knowingly did that, because that happens all the time, with artists, you accidentally, you can rip things off by accident,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you don't
parallel
mean to, but
thinking is a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But still, and again, like I would say, like, even outside of script writing, and like we've mentioned Cameron being a jack of all trades, have you ever seen his concept work for the first Terminator? Like his actual drawings?
Yes.
It's actually like impeccable. And honestly, if you look at his half cyborg face of Arnold Schwarzenegger, because did you hear the story that like of how like he decided Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be the Terminator? Because he didn't want Schwarzenegger to be the Terminator. He wanted some other guy.
Originally he was considering him for Kyle Reese, actually, which is that's
right.
Weird.
That's just a weird choice. But again, like I feel like that's kind of coming off of the idea that the protagonist had to be like, burly, or like, kind of like a Rambo sort of character. But the fact that like we wanted to kind of divert our expectations and make that the villain, and the fact that like, and I feel like his accent accompanied for the antagonist so well, and like Arnold Schwarzenegger's accent works so well.
It's the perfect role for him. Really, because you can Schwarzenegger's acting has been hit and miss, but in that role specifically, I feel like he's just like his physique with the accent, and like the way he, like, I think he also like he even said that like in that scene where he's in the parking garage and he's like scanning around while he's driving looking for Sarah and Kyle, like it was like he was like a shark looking for prey, or even like a security camera kind of like darting, kind of scanning around.
Well, like the movement that he did for that specifically was you could see this in both Terminators. They try to limit the amount of blinking. They're not really blinking at all during those performances.
Yes.
But what's also interesting about the scene you just mentioned is Cameron and him were really focused on a cyborg of efficiency. So you know how we do how we turn our heads to look? What Arnold was doing, he was moving his eyes before he would turn his head, because it would be the ultimate effect of efficiency of how a Terminator would be like searching. So moving the eyes for the head, it just like it adds an uncertainty, because it's not human-like, but it's optimal for that efficiency that really sells that searching, like that movement.
It's a subtlety that really adds to it. Yeah.
But
yeah. And what's also funny, because in addition to the possibility of Arnold playing the Kyle Reese role, James Cameron also had the idea of the Terminator being able to blend in to the environment really easily. So like for Lance Hendrickson, who was in the movie.
What character did he play?
He plays the police, kind of like because there's the main police guy. I forget his name, but then his deputy basically.
Oh, gotcha.
Guy,
okay.
And
is he kind of balding?
He's in Aliens. Yeah. He plays Bishop in Aliens.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Originally, James Cameron had the idea that he would play the Terminator, kind of as like someone who's able to sort of be like stealthy, able to blend in. But really, Arnold Schwarzenegger being the machine makes more sense. But he kind of did the same idea with the T-1000 in Terminator 2. Because Robert Patrick was able to sort of, there was a sort of inhuman-like look to him, but he was able to blend in, much more easily than Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator.
Yeah. From what I heard from Robert Patrick's audition is that he was basically staring at the camera for most of the scene, not blinking. And I think what also helped him sold it was his running.
Oh yeah.
And another interesting little nugget about movement for Robert Patrick. So apparently what he was doing as part of rehearsing for the character, he was practicing like going to gun ranges and shooting without blinking. So
wow.
So like if you look at like that scene where he meets Schwarzenegger, the T-100 for the first time, or T-1000, I'm sorry. Is it T-100 or T-1000? Am I mixing up the two?
So T-1000 is Robert Patrick.
That's what I figured.
Arnold is the T-800 actually.
T-800. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. Okay, so
well,
anyway.
They also say T-101 at one point.
That's what I heard, because like that was from like the second Terminator when they're talking to the guy from Cyberdyne, Miles Dyson.
Miles Dyson, yeah.
Yeah. So, or what's that from Terminator 3, where like they're in the car and then like they're talking.
He says, "I'm a T-101." They've been inconsistent about how like his actual. I think he's supposed to be a T-800 Model 101, meaning model as in Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Arnold Schwarzenegger look is the Model 101, but the T-800 is the endoskeleton.
Gotcha. Yeah. But it's honestly quite incredible that like, he was able to kind of build this franchise out of like just that little indie film. But that's essentially like all like many franchises, except for like maybe Star Wars that kind of already started off with a high budget, but then just escalated. Because even like Mad Max was the same way.
Well, it's funny too, because the first Terminator movie is kind of a horror movie, compared to the rest of the franchise. He's almost like a slasher villain,
And honestly, and I feel like that's appropriate for that budget too. And honestly, I feel like that's what you wanted. And that's what James Cameron had access to, because kind of going off of Aliens, that was very much an action movie. So like, I guess he wanted to make it more in the realm of that, like for Terminator 2 to be more in the realm of an action movie. Did you ever hear? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was gonna pivot to Aliens, but if you have something.
Oh no, I was gonna pivot to Aliens too. So go for it.
Okay, because it's funny because I actually hadn't seen Aliens in its entirety until somewhat recently, and it was interesting too because I had rewatched Alien and around that same time the first Terminator movie, and it was interesting how I felt like the aesthetic of Aliens. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's like a combination of the first Alien movie and the first Terminator movie. And and then there's some of the same cast members with the Terminator, and like the post-apocalyptic scenes kind of were similar to the planet they were on in it. So I felt like visually there's a lot of consistency there.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and like because I was looking at the production design of the first Terminator and Aliens, and I figured like they're very much the same. Like they're very much of like the same sort of aesthetic, or like they feel like they're cut from the same cloth.
I feel like he was building off of Terminator, because then he had a higher budget with Aliens, and it kind of felt like an interesting, because also kind of like with like the first Alien, like the first Terminator, is a horror, and then the second movie in each franchise is more of a straight up action movie. Yeah.
Yeah. But like I was thinking about this. Like I'm just thinking what's going on in the States right now with abortion. I'm like, for anyone that's against abortion, maybe you should just watch Alien, because like, I did not give consent for someone to lay in me like that. But
yeah, I mean, Alien is definitely a metaphor for rape, actually.
Yeah. Well,
at least that's one interpretation of it.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the inspiration for a lot of production design, is because if you look at the planet that they're on, it's supposed to look like big vaginas, like big vulvas. That was very specific to the production design, and the feeling that they wanted to create was the idea of being penetrated. But did you hear the?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of phallic imagery, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the alien, the xenomorph itself looks very like, phallic-like.
The head, yeah.
But so kind of going off of that. So the first Alien was kind of like thematically about birth. The second Alien is about motherhood. So the idea that like
yes, definitely
there's that kind of growth, and I feel like that's very prominent, and it's kind of been ongoing. I feel like that's been ongoing in his filmography of having motherhood be a prominent theme, because of course in like Terminator, that was like the iconic like cathartic, like, or like not catalyst, I should say, catalyst of like the first two Terminators was motherhood.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, and also like, because Ripley becomes a surrogate mother to the character Newt, and then she's fighting off the queen alien at the end, so it's kind of, it's mother versus mother,
Yeah, and honestly, like, well, it's also interesting because James Cameron has oddly enough become like an iconic feminist film, or at least making like feminist film characters, iconic film characters.
Yes,
like he's responsible for Ripley, Sarah Connor, even kind of going off against even like Titanic, like a woman kind of like becoming independent, like kind of so it kind of feeds into that. But
breaking from the mold.
Exactly, but wasn't he also married to why am I blanking on her name right now? Catherine Bigelow.
Linda Hamilton.
Is that right? Linda Hamilton too.
He was married to Catherine Bigelow at one point. Yeah, that's true. Which is interesting. I wonder what their conversations were like.
Well, just imagine in 2009 at the Oscars.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point with the Hurt Locker. Yeah,
Hurt Locker and the Avatar.
But also, he was married to Linda Hamilton at one point.
Yeah, I saw.
I think it was a pretty nasty divorce as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, again, like, I mean, he's been married like 4 or 5 times, so like, and he's again known to be difficult to work with. I imagine he's also a hothead at home, but like, again, still makes great work.
Yeah. yeah. I cannot speak to him in his personal life, but artistically solid.
So I know we've also had this conversation. Sorry, go ahead, man.
No, I was just trying to just go.
All right. Well, I know we've had this conversation a few times, but I want to bring it up. So we're still kind of going off the CGI kind of track for James Cameron, and we've talked about how Terminator and Jurassic Park was super influential of like really pushing CGI during that time, because they were just like these back-to-back films with just like really recognizable CGI, but that just like really pushed it to be like, okay, this is going to become standard. Like computers and innovators and like graphic designers and like visual artists are really going to be pushing it. So I think go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm going to say that the reason why like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park in the early 90s still hold up really well is that they actually use CGI somewhat minimally, because they did a lot of practical stuff too. So they married, like puppet work, with makeup, along with, also just a lot of practical effects, along with CGI. So they really only use CGI when they absolutely had to, because there's a decent amount of T1000 effects that are all practical.
Yeah, I will say the one bad practical effect of the Terminator is probably from the first one where they had the puppet. I would just say that doesn't hold up very well.
The endoskeleton at the end?
No, not the end of.
Here's the
But like,
thing.
I guess so.
Oh.
I guess a little bit, but like, I was talking about specifically the moment where they had the puppet, like, or like the robot, like, or the dummy.
Oh, when
cutting out
he's
the
doing the
eye.
eye thing.
Yeah,
Fair, fair.
yeah. It just looks
Although,
like a
you
little
know,
bit
he
too
is a
there.
robot, so it kind of,
But it's quite
I see what you mean.
clearly, but it's clearly not him. Like, it just like, it clearly looks like a dummy. It looked like a Team America dummy. Like I'm not saying that like the eye looks bad, but I'm just saying like the skin and the prosthetics.
Yeah,
Like
I
it just looks
remember.
wonky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. I mean, it was low budget in '84.
Exactly.
So,
like I'm not dissing it, but just like, but again, like when we're talking about like the visual effects of it, I'm just like, okay, like
yeah,
what was flawed in Terminator became perfected in Terminator 2.
yes,
Makes sense.
definitely.
But like, again, it's just one of those times. It was the time, like being the early 80s, the budget that it had, like, again, like it was just the limitations, but that didn't prevent it from it getting made. It was just one of those films that like, it worked as well as it could with its constraints. And I feel like regardless of the effects, it's still a pretty awesome movie.
Oh, definitely. And even I mentioned the endoskeleton at the end. They used a puppet, and at one point it was also like stop motion animation. And obviously it doesn't exactly hold up today, but I kind of like it. Kind of just makes it creepier in a way. This sort of inhuman motion with the animation. So I actually like the effects at the end.
Yeah, I would just say it was just wonky when it was outside, like during the fire and the truck. I would just say that's where it's a little wonky, but when they're in the factory, I think it looks a lot better.
Yeah, because when they're in the factory, mostly it's a puppet.
Yeah,
that's
so that's
being moved around by puppeteers. So
exactly. So like, I feel like the stop motion at like on the exteriors don't look super great. I mean, because it looks very much like kind of like an early 40s, like, or like an early 30s kind of like action effect, or very much like a King Kong stop motion. Yeah. But once they're kind of
fair.
like, yeah. But again, working with the time and the budget, just like, it's still like, finish your story, finish it. So just like, okay, so regardless of what it looked like, it's just like, you finished it and people were still into it. So I'm like, that's fine.
Pivoting a bit, how do you feel about True Lies?
So True Lies, I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I should have, like, I didn't really have time to rewatch it this week.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a very serviceable Cameron film, but like, remind me of the plot a little bit. So like, Jamie Lee Curtis and Arnold Schwarzenegger are married, but Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't know that he's like a spy, or like he's like an agent.
Yes. And then the movie is kind of him, or like kind of also like I think like there's this, like, also Bill Paxton is in it, and he's like trying to get Jamie Lee Curtis to cheat on Arnold for him.
Right. And like, isn't it like this car salesman or something like that?
Yeah. And he's like a real sleazebag. And so like, also like I forget the specifics of what happened, like what that subplot was about, but they were both hiding stuff from each other, and then they eventually like find out that, like, what's going on, and then they kind of team up, and it's like it's an action comedy. It's like the only comedy that James Cameron's done.
Yeah, and honestly, like I do want to give it another watch at some point, but like, again, it was just one of the, like, I just like, I wanted to try to get through it this week, but like the only film I know all of his film, I know the rest of his filmography fairly well, with the exception of like that and The Abyss. But like, I know I rewatched Aliens this week, so like I had that.
Okay, yeah.
But
real quick, also True Lies is a remake of a French movie.
What's the French movie?
It's called La Totale. I don't speak French.
I don't speak French. Yeah, neither do I.
But yeah, it's from a few years before that, so it's actually a remake of sorts. But I think it holds up well. It's a good Arnold movie.
Yeah, like again, especially like in the mix of Arnold movies, it's probably in his top 5, top 10, just considering like he's got a lot of duds.
Definitely.
I mean, like, I'm sorry, but like the one where I think it was Junior, where he's pregnant. I'm like, okay, we're stretching them pretty far right there.
Yeah, or Twins with Danny DeVito.
Twins, I actually have some fondness for, but Junior, I feel like, okay, why is this a movie? Come on, why is this a movie? Come on.
Yeah,
okay,
starting in the 90s, Arnold became like a punchline, but yeah.
But yeah, so going forward a little bit, so we talked about Terminator, we talked about Aliens, so we haven't probably talked about we haven't talked about Titanic, probably his biggest film of all time, to be quite, I think more than Avatar, to be quite honest.
You say his best or his biggest movie?
His big, like, at least, like, I guess in terms of epic scale and impact and influence, I think it might be Titanic. Like, if we're gonna say in terms of cinematic influence, probably Terminator 2. If we're talking about pop cultural influence, like how much it's like impact, like so many times it's parodied, or how big of an impact it like made for its stars. Like, it's just like, I don't think there's like a film that's been bigger than that. And especially for a time where it did, especially for a film that was like, it had the odds stacked against them. A lot of people didn't think it was going to succeed, because it was like $200 million, like twice over its original budget. Even so, even to the point where Cameron like took no salary. He took no payment for Titanic.
It paid off in the end.
Well, I mean, like he made Avatar, so, and we'll talk about that later. But like, but Titanic, like, this is where, when you are mentioning that, like, he's not the most original storyteller, but he is a great storyteller, I think it's the most prominent in Titanic. Just like,
well, and that's also, like, if you think about, like, the role of a director, really fundamentally is being a storyteller, you know. And he is a writer too, but I think he excels better as a director.
I agree. And to be quite honest, I think it's honestly at its peak with Titanic. I mean, like, just because I really appreciated everything in Titanic from when I was a kid. And even though I get that it's kind of a cliche story, everything in that film still holds up. Like, I don't think there's a single, and what's interesting is that you could still, everyone in that film is still like culturally relevant. Like, Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio still have careers today. So you can pop that film as if it just as if it just got released at the cinemas, and you would like find it relatively believable to some degree, even though they look like 20 years younger.
Yeah.
But
there's a number of names. There's Kathy Bates. Although what's his name? People don't really talk. Billy Zane isn't the most popular these days.
That's all right. I feel like he's one of those characters you just love to hate, like in that film. Like, very much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very much like the warden in like the Shawshank Redemption. Like, he played this character so well, you just like, you love to hate him. Also, Billy Zane in Back to the Future, one of the bullies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of Biff's bullies.
Nice.
Yeah,
but the funny thing is about Titanic is that, like, I think before James Cameron made that movie, he was just like obsessed with the Titanic, and he would like go down it. He's like on his own, because he's also done some like deep sea documentaries. So he would just like go down on like a submarine and just explore the Titanic himself. He was just like obsessed with it, and then he just decided to make a movie, you know, about that, basically.
Yeah, like that started with The Abyss. I feel, and like, honestly, well, this is why The Abyss is like so foundational for the rest of his career, is because because of course with the CGI, I was influenced for Terminator 2, but of course when it came to deep sea diving, well, Cameron really pushed it to try to make it as practical as possible with the with water, and like, you have to think about, like, it's probably the most troubled production in the history of cinema, considering, like,
Titanic.
Oh no, The Abyss.
Oh, The Abyss. Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, like, I've only seen parts of the behind the scenes of it, but like, you know, but the behind the scenes is like a full hour, but you just hear all these stories that like the sets are falling apart, like there was flooding, like like, again, you had to have really, along with the actors being prepped, you also have to prep the crew, like the camera operators, and like to kind of prep in to go with them, because they need to be also skilled divers. Like both the crew and the cast have to be skilled divers.
Yeah.
You have to have a medical team that has that's a skilled diver as well to get anybody. Because
Yeah.
there's been multiple times on that set like people nearly drowned, and I think Ed Harris has had stories where like I like nearly died on that set. Like,
jeez.
But and apparently it used to get so cold like in the water like during that set that they had to have hot tubs ready, and they would have production meetings in the hot tubs like while they're on set.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like for what, and apparently they had to shoot out of sequence or like significantly like from their original schedule because like some of the sets just weren't finished. Like some of the tanks were fully completed. And again, from all these flaws that were in the Abyss, again, just polished up a little bit more in Titanic, even though there were still production problems with it. At least like he had the that prior like instances of, like, okay, how can we prep to make sure this is less of an issue in Titanic? And I think those same issues still happen, but
so the Abyss prepped him for Terminator 2 and Titanic. So that's
exactly.
Oh. And then even I know on the new Avatar movies he's doing, one of the reasons it's taken so long is that he's doing underwater motion capture, which apparently is like a whole thing.
I'm super curious about it, to be quite honest, but like I just feel like there's not the same, like Avatar feels like a bit of a punchline now, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it just doesn't have the same sort of appeal as like Titanic, even though like it was the highest grossing film for like a decade.
Yeah, he beat his own record. It's pretty crazy. But what's funny about Avatar is that like obviously it was a huge phenomenon when it came out. But I mean, obviously he's gonna do like 4 sequels, but it hasn't spawned a franchise yet. And it's just like it just became completely irrelevant, even though it was like the highest grossing movie by far. Like at the time when it happened, it was by far the highest grossing movie. And like now no one really cares about it.
Well, it's crazy because if we think about like Titanic, that has stayed culturally relevant for the past 20 years.
Definitely.
If we look at Endgame, I think it's going to be a similar deal. It's going to be culturally relevant for at least a decade.
Avengers Endgame?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and as long as Marvel's still making movies, which I think they obviously are, like it's going to stay culturally relevant. And it just depends when does Marvel want to break its own record, I think is like really the question.
Yeah, for sure. But because I know Endgame got pretty close to Avatar in terms of box
broke
office.
it.
I'm gonna look.
It broke it when Avatar did something similar to break Titanic. They had an extended release, like extended movie release, so it could break the record. But Endgame is number one now.
No, check this out. Oh, okay. Well, I guess because it's still Avatar, 2.8 billion. Avengers Endgame is almost 2.8 billion. They're like neck and neck.
Oh, okay. I thought I think
this might be total gross of every release, I believe.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, because like I know that like Endgame got an extended cut release like shortly after its original release. Same with Avatar, and even Titanic had an extended release over like a couple years, like several years later with an extended cut. So it crossed over the 2 billion mark.
Well, James Cameron, for the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, kind of George Lucas. He made it into 3D. He did 3D.
That's right.
Like working off of Avatar, he did a 3D re-release, but also did a little bit of George Lucasing because I think Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed out that the stars in the sky were not accurate to how they would be in April 1912. So they actually consulted with Neil deGrasse Tyson to get an accurate sky of like how it actually would have been at that time. So
sorry, hold on. I gotta pause this for a sec. Okay, yes. Okay, so you were mentioning like they consulted Neil deGrasse Tyson for the star simulation. Well, like, and he could put well, it was weird that I still find it weird that he had a 3D Titanic because I think that's a big reason why Avatar became a punchline is because it really kickstarted the whole 3D phenomenon in the early 2010s.
Definitely. Definitely. That's like the big reason like James Cameron was really pushing that. And he was innovative in that way, for sure.
Well, like again, like I feel like I appreciate him for like being that innovator because especially because like I feel like he was like at the forefront with ILM with visual effects. but I will have to give him credit because I do remember seeing
ILM is George Lucas.
Avatar.
Sorry, I'm a George Lucas fan.
Oh no, it's okay. Well, like he was really forefronting it, but yes, I get that Lucas was like ILM and like, but like,
yes.
but no, you're completely right because I would just say he was helping push ILM, but yeah, just like Lucas.
Yes.
But
not to be a well actually kind of person.
well actually
Yeah.
But I will just say I remember seeing it in 3D. I think I saw it twice in 3D, and I honestly do really enjoyed the experience, and I really appreciate that moment with I think it was like the whatever Tree of Wonder, like petals seeming down. It was a really cool 3D effect that I'm like, okay, like this is what like a 3D movie should be.
Yeah. The thing is, it was very specific. The reason why it became, I watched a whole video essay about this. I forget where it is, but it was in summary, like, so the reason why it became a huge phenomenon and forgettable since is because it was basically an experience meant to be in the theater. And it was very immersive with the 3D. And even in the movie, the character Jake Sully is like becoming immersed in this avatar. So the whole movie is kind of this like, it's kind of a thrill ride, that really needs to be experienced in the theater. So if you're just watching it at home, like even if you have a good setup, it's like, yeah, this is cool, but like it's really meant to be on the big screen, in full 3D,
Yeah,
because if you're just watching like the movie as is, it's like it's okay,
Yeah, like I would just say like that's pretty much how I feel about James Cameron films because they are at the epic scale, and epic films like that need to be on like the biggest screen, like there are like, and it's really for the films that, well, you want to say like all films should be in the cinema, like, well, like yes, but I would just say the convenience of being able to have access to these films now it's very nice.
Yeah.
And especially during the past pandemic when we're just like watching like movies on like on TV, it's very convenient. But
I feel like certain films are kind of like more meant to be watched. Like I feel like movies that are more visually spectacular, are kind of meant to be watched in a theater versus movies that, maybe like a comedy would be, not as, or a drama, it would be not as like, obviously it's still better to watch it in the theater, but doesn't feel as necessary.
Yeah, I agree. Like, well, I think epics are what we're kind of like thinking of cinematic experiences. I mean, you can have these kind of like dramas, like The Lighthouse, sort of like feel like a cinematic experience, but I feel like right now it's becoming like the epics are like what we're gonna go to like the cinemas for. That feel more than just like watching a movie. It's a theatrical, like like a thrill ride experience, and I feel like that's why like Scorsese had his little moments with Marvel about that. It's like they're just theme rides. I'm like, honestly, I totally see his point. Like, because I think it's quite justifiable to view like Marvel and epic films. Like epic films can be cinematic, but very much like that, it could just feel like a thrill ride.
Fair. Although, I feel like it's also like, obviously the Marvel movies aren't, the most artistically amazing movies story-wise and character-wise, but there's likable characters, there's good story arcs. I feel like Scorsese was a little bit dismissive with when he said that, and I agree. I see what he means with what he said. I just feel like they also can have good stories too.
Yeah. Definitely a conversation we could dive into another day, but he wrote like the whole, like, I think it was a New York Times or like the New Yorker article about it. That was actually a good read, but but like, I have a feeling that like it's the next Avatar movies are going to have a similar sort of are probably going to have a similar effect, but I don't know if they're going to do very box officely well, to be quite honest.
Like, I mean, I think they'll be profitable, but I feel like it just feels like they're like because the original Avatar came out in 2009. We're talking 12 years ago at this point, with nothing since. So he's doing 4 sequels, and then like 2 and 3 are back to back, and 4 and 5 are back to back. It's like, and now also it's 20th Century Fox, so Disney now owns the rights to Avatar. So, and they just keep getting delayed and pushed back, and it's like, who actually is interested in these Avatar sequels? I mean, I'm curious, like, but like,
I mean,
who's like genuinely like, yeah, those Avatar sequels?
yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm sure they're out there. They're Avatar fanatics, but like, I would just say
Sure.
like, I'm not excited about it. Is the thing
Yeah.
like for what
Same.
like it's being like for the amount of for the film that it was in 2009 and considering like how much like money and effort is being put behind these like the sequels of it. I just feel
Yeah.
like there's not much hype for it. And honestly, like, but
Yeah.
here's the thing: if James Cameron can divert our expectations, like if he can honestly do it, I'm all for it. Like, please do it. Like, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I would
just not.
love to be surprised and proven wrong
Yeah.
about my interest. But I just
Mhm.
looked it up. So Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5 are going to come out December 2022, 2024, 2026, and 2028. So yeah. So by the time Avatar 5 comes out, it'll be almost 20 years since the first movie.
Jeez, he's probably gonna have somebody like that second in command to be like, okay, if I die, finish this.
Yeah, I mean, basically, because yeah, we're talking like 5 is going to come out over 7 years from now.
Yeah.
So, geez, yeah,
Well, like I think it's also just one of those things. Like I feel like they have to have those sort of contingencies like this now, like because
yeah.
even when I think Richard Linklater had to do that, where in case he died during the production of one, like for like Boyhood,
Oh, sure, yeah.
he had contracted Ethan Hawke to like finish the film for him.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
There
and
you
I
go.
think he probably is doing the same thing for like another like 20-year project he has going on. Like he's doing
Oh,
like
yeah.
yeah. So like I think like for something like Cameron, who's probably got Avatar attached to him, where it's like I would imagine the total budget of these 5 sequels are like $1 billion plus, like for the budgets.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I'm looking at Avatar 2 is 250 million alone.
Yeah. So when you're talking about like a 10-figure budget, 9-figure budget.
Okay, I'm seeing. Okay, so when I go to Avatar 3 on Wikipedia, it says budget 1 billion shared between the 4 sequels, basically.
Yeah.
So
like your
$1 billion budget.
Yeah, so you're 10 figures for like that you're talking about, and like he started this in the 2010s, so like 20 years in the making for 4 films.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm sure the 4 of the movies combined will make over $1 billion. Although for a movie to be profitable, it usually needs to make over 2 times the amount of the budget.
Yeah, 2 to 2.5 times marketing
budget.
budget. Yeah, and then you only get maybe 40 to 50% of the first week's growth, right? First week's gross from the theaters. Depending on the contract, but I imagine like since it's Disney, they might get 2/3, so maybe more like 60% of every first dollar gross from theaters.
Yeah, I mean it'll be profitable,
Yeah.
But it's just like damn, $1 billion. But I mean, he has a proven track record, so
yeah. I mean, like that's really the thing. I mean, again, I think he's really also in the like while he's not consciously doing it, I think like unconsciously there's the fact that like what he lost out in Titanic, he's like making it up for Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's other movies like I feel like he probably doesn't have to worry about money, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think he's had to worry about money since like the early 90s. Like I think after Terminator 2, he's just like, okay, I don't need to worry about money anymore.
Yeah. I think after that he had. So real quick, going back to Terminator 2, that's actually my second favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, we've had many conversations about this, and your first
after
one
the
Matrix, right?
Yeah.
Wachowskis.
Got the beginning of the 90s and the end of the 90s. But yeah, I feel like that movie is basically like a perfect action movie.
No, and I feel like
as perfect as you can get.
No, that's perfectly so. And honestly, like, well, I'm curious. Do you remember the first time you watched Terminator 2? Like, do you remember when you watched it?
Yes, I rented it from the library when I was like 12 or something, and I remember I had to get my dad to like sign off on the fact that it was a R-rated movie. So, yeah. But actually, it's funny because I saw Terminator 3. Is the first Terminator movie I saw in theaters when I was young, and then I saw the first one, and then I saw the second one.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean it blew me away.
Yeah, and I think well, I just remember I think I watched it on TV first, and I just remember
Yeah.
like thinking like I wanted to be like John Connor because like I was a big fan of Edward Furlong during that little stint. And honestly,
Yeah.
I was and like even so, like like Edward Furlong, I would also go and watch like American History X, like, and then I also he had this little weird movie called Brain Scan that I thought was kind of cool. It was like this campy like it's this kind of this like campy B horror film. Like I actually kind of like
Yeah.
but like but yeah, like I was just super like, but John Connor, he was like the ultimate rebel at the time, and like kind of being like a 10-year-old like a 10-year-old kid watching this film, just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like John Connor, like, get my dirt.
That was his first movie too.
Yeah,
he was basically picked off the street essentially.
Yeah, apparently like he got selected at like some boys and girls club that he went to, and then like and honestly, James Cameron was reluctant on hiring him because he was an untrained actor. Like he was just like because he was picked off the street, he's just like, I'm really looking for like a serious dramatic performance, and I feel like I don't know if I'm gonna get it from this kid. Well, but I would just say the casting of it was spot on. Edward Furlong was an amazing casting choice, because if you were to get some like artsy theater musical kid to kind of play Terminator, which is
because he felt very real. He felt like an actual kid. He was well written. Like it for the most part felt like that's how a kid would be, like a 10, 12-year-old kid, at that time. Like he was just because a lot of kids in movies aren't well written because they're written by adults who like think they know how kids would act when they don't. So yeah, it was really well done.
Well, I also felt like it worked because like that was very much Edward Furlong, just because he was like a very much a grounded kid, like because he didn't come from like, a wealthy family or like even like a middle class family. Like, I mean, I think his family was very much working class, and you're talking about a character where where he's been trained for war since birth, trained for war, and his mother's in a mental institution. He's being raised by a foster family. Like, you have to think about the psyche of that kid, and the fact that like, Edward Furlong, like, being like a kind of a working class kid, kind of rough, like he looks very much in his character, like in his real life persona, looks very like rugged. Not now, but even during the time.
Well, unfortunately, his first movie was his peak. So he kind of fell on the typical child star tropes, unfortunately. Which is why he wasn't in the third movie or any of the others.
Well, he was CGI'd in the last one.
Well, I actually have not seen Terminator Dark Fate, believe it or not.
He was CGI'd, but not a spoiler. Not a spoiler.
I have heard that. So, but because like all the Terminator movies after the second, it's just like, oh man, like there's elements of all of them that I like, but overall it's just like, man, even like Terminator Salvation, that's actually the most hyped movie I was the most hyped for any movie ever. And I'm a huge Marvel, huge Star Wars fan. That was the most hyped because it was like, they were doing the future war, which was my favorite element of the Terminator movies. Christian Bale, fresh off of the Dark Knight,
What was it? It was the Dark Knight. I was thinking Batman Begins. You're right. Yeah, the Dark Knight, because it was 2009.
And like it seemed like it had a lot of good things going for it, and then it just ended up being super mediocre. And like the casting was good. Like Anton Yelchin was amazing as a young Kyle Reese.
Kyle Reese.
Like and I liked a lot of the aesthetics of it and a lot of the effects, but oh man, it just
dropped the ball.
Disappointing.
Yeah.
And I know Terminator Dark Fate is the most involved that James Cameron has been in post the second movie, because I know he was a producer and co-wrote the story as well. But I still haven't seen it. But I've heard mixed things.
I actually haven't watched either, but I've just seen that opening with Edward Furlong.
Okay. I just need to watch it and rip that Band-Aid off. But you know what what's the best Terminator since the second one? Believe it or not.
The Rise of the Machines?
No, the TV show. The TV show.
The Sarah Connor
Chronicles. That was a genuinely good show.
Yeah, I like that too, with Lena Headey as Sarah Connor.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Before Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It only lasted 2 seasons, and it ended on a cliffhanger. And like, man, it was really well done.
Yeah, because I liked it too, because a spoiler, but I don't really care. But like, it ends up with like John Connor like like leaving Sarah to go to the future essentially, and just like kind of
Yeah.
being just like dropped off into a war zone. Like, and then I kind of
Yeah,
like
it
that.
was.
And like Kyle Reese's brother like just didn't recognize him. He was just kind of like, so it's just kind of like this
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
beginning. Yeah. So it seemed
It was
interesting.
like it was a good continuation because it seems like all of the it's like all of the movies since the second one have tried to like continue the story in some meaningful way, but I feel like the show was the only one that I felt like was actually good. Now
Mhm.
Dark Fate, maybe I'll like that, but I've heard mixed things. So yeah, it's
Yeah, well, I just felt like the Arnold show after like Terminator 2. Like, I mean, like while it very much is a like an Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of franchise, considering he was the face of
yeah.
it. I just feel like it was just nice to see like a Terminator where he wasn't the face of it, and I feel like with Salvation he was kind of shoehorned in, and the only reason he wasn't is
I
because he was
actually
governor.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't mind that effect. I think that effect looks decent, all things considered. And I was fine with that. And I think a Terminator movie can work without him. It's
Mhm.
just they just didn't like. I don't think that was the problem of Salvation.
Yeah.
It was just I know like there was like a lot of rewrites with that movie because I know originally what was going to happen was John Connor was going to die, and then Marcus was basically going to like have his face like surgically attached, like John Connor's face attached to him, and he was basically going to be like the new John Connor. Maybe I'm not describing it as it was supposed to be depicted, but
It
there's
sounded
going to be
very
something
much
like
like,
that.
yeah, it sounded very much like Face Off.
Yeah, but yeah, true. But so I think there's just a lot of rewrites happening with the script, and I think there's probably too many cooks in the kitchen with Terminator Salvation.
Yeah, I honestly just don't remember very well. I remember watching it when it first came out, but after that, I'm just like the only
It's
thing
kind
that's
of forgettable.
Well, the only thing that's like highly memorable from it was Christian Bale's freak out. I feel like his freak out is more memorable than the actual movie.
It's true. That was a huge viral sensation when it came out. I remember. Yeah, that is funny too.
Yeah,
that did have a more cultural standing.
Yeah. So oddly enough, like as influential as the Terminator franchise is, one of the most influential moments or like it culturally impactful moments was that freak out.
Yeah, for sure.
Jesus. You're supposed to be a professional. Yeah. And
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
that was the Shane Hurlbert. Like, I don't know if you know him, but the
Shane Hurlbert, yeah, he's
I thoroughly like Shane Hurlbert.
He's like a big name in cinematography.
Yeah, dude. And honestly, like he's and like I watch his videos too. Like he's super like his his DIY and or like how to videos.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of his. So just like fuck, I hate that he got shitted on because like
it's unfortunate that the audio got released in the first place because it was said that like they like after that happened, it was like immediately apologized and like everything was fine. It's just like Christian Bale was like just like under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and honestly,
it was kind of just in the moment kind of thing that everyone happened to.
Yeah, I honestly I don't diss Bale for doing that, because I get that it was probably an intense scene, and then
I mean, I don't like being on set. Like I'm a filmmaker, but I genuinely like being on set is stressful.
Honestly, I love being on sets for that reason because being on doing post work for me is stressful. I think you're
okay. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I like doing this. It's okay. And but honestly, for me, I dread sitting down, and I'm having that with work right now, where my job is not supposed to be sitting down most of the time. It's supposed to be standing up and kind of being a facilitator. Now that I'm doing the sitting down, I'm miserable. But being on set, I
prefer post work for the most part.
It's such a tedious process for me to do editing, but when you're on set, you're actually on location. You're actually I feel like it's the first instance where it's coming off the screen and you see the pieces kind of, you're beginning to see all the pieces come together, and I think that's what makes it enjoyable.
True.
Where you're seeing it, or the pieces getting made. They're actually while I'm not a great editor, I honestly believe the film is actually really made in editing. I feel like
it's kind of made 3 times in a way. It's when it's written, then when it's shot, then when it's edited, and each time it's probably going to change somewhat, from each stage.
Yeah, exactly. And to be quite honest, like
Unless
I
they're
like
Quentin Tarantino.
unless you're Tarantino, then you're just like it's exactly exactly as the script. But
Yeah.
I will say I I think like the most difficult parts of filmmaking, I actually think being on set is actually a little bit of the easiest. I actually think writing and editing are much more difficult, at least for me. Like I never
That's
been on
fair.
a
I
James
mean,
Cameron set yet, so maybe that'll change my mind. But like I will say
yeah.
I will say probably editing and writing for me are the most challenging. Like me holding a
I feel like
camera, I'm
editing's the
like I can do it.
easiest. Yeah, I mean, I
I
just feel like on set, there's just so much that can go wrong.
that's what I like about
I
it.
mean, that's the
Like
nature of the beast.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love the spontaneity of it because it's all about it's from there. It's just
sure.
like it's all on the spot problem solving that like you don't have much time to like really like process it. You just have to make snap decisions, and that's
Yeah,
what like that like I love
true,
that. I
true.
like that kind of stress. If I had to choose the
Fair,
stress of
fair.
if I had to choose the stress of like being on set or being in editing, I'm like give me the production set, give me the production stress.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
mean,
anyway, oh sorry, go
diamonds
ahead.
are formed under pressure. Diamonds are formed under pressure. So,
There you go. But sorry, kind of going to I want to go into like a little bit more lore of James Cameron. So did you ever hear that
mhm.
like you ever hear of his pitch to aliens? How he pitched aliens?
How do you do it?
Okay, so like it's more of just lore. I don't actually believe it to be true, but again, it's a myth that I kind of like. So, but apparently, he went in to say like he's coming off Terminator and he's going to this this pitch meeting. Like, so James Cameron, director of Terminator, what do you want to make? Okay, James Cameron's got a little whiteboard with him. He goes up, doesn't say a word. He just goes to the board and just grabs a little Sharpie and just writes alien. Points to the board again, writes an S, aliens, and what he does at the end, he just draws a $ through the S, and that was his pitch. So
Yeah,
again, like I don't believe it to be true, but it's a fun little lore myth of James Cameron that I
yeah.
really liked.
It is funny that the sequel is just they just added an S at the end of it.
Hey, let's keep it simple. I mean, like it's a money train, but in
It's also. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
on. There you go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like it was like of course I don't believe it to be true because like a sequel has been was desperate to get made after Alien, but like it just had a troubled pre-production or was in
Yeah,
development
yeah.
for a while.
It because the second one came out 7 years after the first, so it was
Mhm.
kind of they weren't sure what they were doing with it. But
Yeah.
it's also funny because the Predator movies, the naming of those is like really funny how simple it is because it's Predator, Predator 2, Predators, the Predator. It's like the simplest, and I mean all the movies are kind of mostly standalone, but it's funny how like just utterly simple that franchise is. But that's an aside. But what was I gonna say about? Is it about aliens or I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're okay. But like briefly going into the stuff. Oh, go ahead.
You know that James Cameron in the late 80s into the 90s was working on a Spider-Man movie?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was
He was
I mean, I'm
writing a
assuming this
Spider-Man
was
movie.
I mean, I'm assuming this was like of course pre-Grammy, like or like was this post Terminator pre-Grammy sort of deal, like of when that timing?
Yes. Yeah, he was working on a script in the 90s, but I guess I'm not sure why, but it just didn't end up working out.
Yeah. Was this the Nicolas Cage? Nicolas Cage. Oh no, wait, no, he was Superman.
That's Superman.
Why am I thinking Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Jesus, I'm all over the place.
Well, it's funny because Nick Cage voices the noir Spider-Man in
Spider-Man
Into the Spider-Verse.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, hey, the role is there, man. Like, you gotta go. I will say that was perfect casting.
Yeah.
But
also Nick Cage did voice Superman in this Teen Titans animated movie, so he did play Superman in something.
But,
and sorry, another little quick thing. Also, in the Lego Batman movie, Billy D. Williams voiced Two-Face, and he played Harvey Dent in
the Tim Burton. Yeah.
So it was like a very delayed, what's it called?
recurring
delayed
now.
satisfaction or whatever. Anyway, enough of my tangents. Go on.
No, delayed satisfaction just seems like a limp orgasm, just like.
Yes. You know.
Yeah, but no, I wanted to get
delayed
into
gratification. Delayed gratification.
Okay, there you go. There you go. All right, very much like a limp orgasm. All right, but anyway. Going into back to James Cameron. Get back to James Cameron. So I want to talk about his stunt work. So so like I will did you so the one of the most iconic scenes in Terminator 2 was the helicopter chase.
Oh
yeah. So like well, interesting little continuity error. Like Robert Patrick broke
that is a major
like you don't see it broke. But apparently, like, so when it was going under these bridges and through these little underpasses, like it was pretty much like it was all practical. And just the fact that like I think they had to get some crazy guy just to like say like, fuck it, I'll do it. It's not safe, but like I'll make it happen.
It's extremely dangerous.
Well, like, and
that could have turned into a snuff film real quickly.
I mean, like, there's that much like clear way, but like
the clearance is insane.
Oh, dude, but
it has to be like the most skilled helicopter pilot. Yeah, or even there's the stunt that Arnold did in that scene also, where later when the T-1000 gets that truck of liquid nitrogen, and then he's kind of ramming their pickup truck, and then Arnold just like goes from the pickup truck to the tractor trailer, and just like with the machine gun just like right in the window. Apparently that stunt that Arnold did was very dangerous, and Arnold did a lot of his own stunts.
But like, and again, you got to give him credit to it, because again, Terminator 2 probably has some of the best stunt work. Like,
true.
I like in at least of the 90s action movies, I would say like I can't really put it at number one, because I think the movie with the best stunt work, at least in terms of my taste, is like Mad Max.
Fair.
Yeah.
Which one?
I got probably the most recent one, Fury Road. Like the Road Warrior was really good as well, but like I would just say like in terms of stunt work, before Mad Max Fury Road, I did think Terminator 2 had the best stunts.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for Mad Max Fury Road for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, like that, I think that's pretty much it that I have in terms of Terminator, like James Cameron lore. I mean, I'm just I think that because there were just those things that like, his inception of like Terminator, like his pitch to aliens. He's become like a real like odd character, like in some sense.
Yeah,
like
his obsession with like the deep sea, and I think he's even done innovations related to that as well. He's done some documentaries.
Well, you ever see South Park's Raising the Bar? Like that episode.
No, I don't think.
Okay, they have a whole they have a whole episode. I think it was dedicated to like how people are obsessed with reality TV, and the bar is set so low. And Cartman is getting in a fight with like Honey Boo Boo. That's kind of the episode. But there's this whole B plot with they have a James Cameron trying to like go undersea, go deep sea diving. So to literally raise the bar, like the standards of like people's like entertainment, but he literally goes under the sea to like kind of raise this bar.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just like and they have like this whole musical number called like James Cameron. Like so, if you look up South Park James Cameron song, there's a whole musical just to it saying like James.
I gotta check that out. Did almost all of his movies start with an A or a T?
That I didn't even realize. Fact. No shit.
Yeah.
Like I guess so. Yeah. Avatar, Alien, not Piranha 2.
Not Piranha 2. But he didn't write that. So
but that doesn't seem like Cameron canon, to be quite honest. Like not with it doesn't seem like a Cameron film.
But
it is technically, but it doesn't really feel like
he directed it, but yeah, it's like a proto Cameron film in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe I almost forgot this. So this is also a reason why I have so much respect for James Cameron. So being a self-taught filmmaker, like he was essentially like reading and studying everything about filmmaking from like the library while he was like a full-time truck driver. So like,
wow, yeah,
I kind of forgot. I kind of forgot about that because he was very much like, you know, working class person who had this passion for filmmaking because like he didn't really like, I can't remember where he's from exactly, but like wasn't from LA.
I
He was
think
just,
let me see real quick.
yeah, because
Originally from Canada,
that's it.
Ontario.
Yeah.
I
mean,
Yeah.
so like not much of a like iconic area for filmmaking there. And then the fact that like, you know,
Yeah.
like trying to like learn cinema, he was just like studying on the weekends at a library, or like trying to read every book that he could while he was a truck driver. And he did that for years.
Yeah.
And I think until he did Piranha 2, or like until he like, I guess he got into production design.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I have a lot of respect for self-taught filmmakers for sure. You know, I think because like, you know, film school's great, you know, I have mixed opinions on film school, but you know, you can learn so much by there's so much you can do. Oh, I mean, even particularly today, there's so much you can do, you know, you can learn on your own through YouTube and, you know, the internet. But back then it's like, you just had whatever books and knowledge you had access to, you know, in like, you know, late 70s.
Yeah, I mean, like filmmaking at the time, I mean, it was a rich man's game. I mean, it was really the fact that like, you know, the reason you went to film school is to get your hands on the equipment and like film stuff. Well, like, yeah, but like you might as well get a degree if you're paying for all this additional film equipment or like renting all this film stuff, like, you know, film stuff.
It's true. I mean, the barrier of entry was very high back then.
Yeah, that like it. So like I get why filmmakers now and probably like James Cameron just like you don't need to go to film school now and that's pretty much like I feel like that's pretty much like every iconic director like of the 80s has been a proponent of like, you know, like Terry Gilliam, and like you hear like John Carpenter, you hear John Landis say like you don't need to go to film school, like, you know, just like start making movies since it's all digital. So but they're not saying not go to college. They're not saying not go to college. They're just saying don't go to school for film. Because even yeah, I haven't heard too much. No, it's okay. Just haven't heard too much of an opinion about James Cameron about that. But I think like I'm sure he's got a similar mindset. Like, you know, you don't have to go to school to study this because he's very much an autodidact in that sense. Went to the Stanley Kubrick Film School.
He said, I remember a quote. He said, kind of like don't call yourself an aspiring filmmaker. Just call yourself a filmmaker.
That's true. Yeah. And you do have a lot of you do have a lot of proponents. That Robert Rodriguez says the same thing. He's just like the same thing and just says, now get a business card.
Yeah. I mean, well, the Alita Battle Angel, originally produced James Cameron was going to direct that movie, but then he was too busy with Avatar, so he handed it over to Robert Rodriguez.
That does make sense. And honestly, I honestly do see that film as being like a very much a James Cameron film. Like, would that make sense? In terms of scale,
he produced it at least. I think so. He was part of it for sure.
I will say, do you feel like there are other filmmakers that like that are cut from the same cloth as James Cameron? Like, do you feel like, you know, in terms of epic style, like have dipped like it's up like action, romance? Like, I don't know.
Hard to say.
Yeah, I might have to.
It feels like I mean, you know, I don't want to overly praise him, but he does feel kind of unique in a number of ways, you know.
Yeah, but I feel like it's interesting because you kind of have like these filmmakers that are at the epic scale that have been heavily influenced by Kubrick, but I just don't hear too many filmmakers that openly say Cameron is what I just find an interesting thing.
Yeah, so that's, you don't hear that too much. Yeah.
Or like Ridley Scott, for instance. Like I feel like Ridley Scott is at least like say like people are comfortable saying that.
That's a good point. He might be somewhat similar to James Cameron in terms of like he's got like a lot of like big hit movies that like are often epic in scale, you know.
Yeah, but I would just say in difference between Scott and Cameron is that Scott's track record is kind of dodgy. I think he's got like a handful of great films where like James Cameron, at least like.
But Ridley Scott has done more too.
Yeah.
So
Well, like I feel like again, this is why I have another like a high level of respect towards Cameron is that he really takes his time with his projects because in
particularly
between,
recently.
particularly recently, but even with the jump between like Titanic and Avatar or like True Lies and Titanic, like for like 4 years and then like 10 years, I'm like, okay, I at least respect your dedication to a single project. Where like
yeah, definitely.
because you do have Scott like that was like pumping out a film every year, and it was kind
It's
of like
true.
best quality.
He does a lot. Yeah.
But like, screw it, man. I mean, like, dude, if you're Ridley Scott, like, he didn't make Alien his first film till he was 40. So like, if he had the power to make as many movies or like whatever movie you want, like, dude, all power to you, dude. Go for it.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're running out of steam here, but like,
yeah.
But just but I'm just curious, did you hear anything, like, do you know much about, has anything really been released, anything about what Avatar 2 is going to be about? Because I just imagine the humans are going to come back. Like, it just might just be like this sort of like epic home invasion film.
Let's see. There's Avatar 2 on Wikipedia. It says the premise is Jake Sully and Neytiri have formed a family and are doing anything to stay together. However, they are forced to leave their home and explore the different regions of Pandora when their old threat returns to finish what they started. So it just sounds like a retread of the first movie.
Yeah, but like I imagine it's going to be kind of like similar to like America, like imperialism. I think is probably going to be a theme.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that was the theme of the first one. So
yeah. Exactly. I mean, like, and of course, like, there's like the underscore themes of environmentalism and stuff like that. I mean, like, very much James Cameron stuff. But we'll see what happens.
But like we said, he's a good storyteller, so
I really hope he I really hope he blows me out of the water. I mean, like, he's in his like deep sea thing, and I'm just like, oh shit, like But
yeah, and like with water too, it's like The Abyss, Titanic, and now Avatar 2 with water. He loves water.
I mean, that's the way he's gonna go out. Like, he's gonna finish Avatar 5. I'm like, okay, I'm going under.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of a character that's like, okay, I'm just gonna dive in, just be like, just like go in like DiCaprio, I'll just like, say bye, like, leave my films on the door.
Yeah. I guess the door wasn't big enough to stay on for some reason.
Yeah, well, like I do remember like they had a Mythbusters about that. Like they had they had like, well, you could have actually fit them on both of them on the door. Well, like the script didn't have it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they should have had it so that whatever thing she was on could actually only have one person. Yeah, Rose, but it's like you're missing the point if you're gonna like overly complain about that.
Yeah, exactly. Rose.
It's kind of like the ending of Return of the Jedi. It's like, oh, why did the Emperor not do anything when Darth Vader lifted him up and threw him down that shaft? It's like fair. That's kind of a practical complaint you could have, but you're missing the point.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, regardless, like James Cameron's still an amazing storyteller. Like, I mean, he's had maybe like 4 masterpieces under his belt. Like Terminator,
a handful,
Aliens, Titanic, Terminator 2. If you want to throw is Avatar a masterpiece?
Visual, I think from a visual standpoint, yes.
Okay, so
I can say that at least.
All right, so we'll throw in 5. So you have 5 masterpieces under his belt. So 5 films that are going to stand the test of time.
Yeah, he has a good track record for sure.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. All right, I think we're going to end it there. But thanks again for coming, man. Cool. I mean, I know it's been a very off the rails sort of topic, talking about Terminator, all this crazy shit, and I'm going into the Marvel.
But I mean, it all connects though,
Yeah, there you go, man. All right, dude. Well, I'll catch you later, man. We'll talk about topics for next time, but but let me know what you're interested in, because I figure we got to do some deep dive because I know you're into cyberpunk. So I think
Deep
like
dive.
deep, deep dive into James Cameron.
Yes.
But yeah, I know you're really into cyberpunk, and Terminator being a cyberpunk film, I'd be interested, like, kind of seeing more like what your thoughts are about that genre. So maybe we could talk about Terminator a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, we could like Blade Runner. Yeah.
Yeah. Conversation for another day. All right.
Definitely.
All right, man. Be safe. All right. Take it easy.
Sounds good. See you, man.
See you, dude.